Have you ever wondered what would happen if a Space Marine chapter and a Knight House formed a permanent tag team? Well, thanks to you guys, we're going to be talking about that today with our channel army, the Readers That Wargame army, the Knight Wardens. The Knight Wardens are a Space Marine chapter that specialize in exactly that. They've befriended a Knight House, and were actually created at the request of that Knight House. But before we dive into that, as promised, we're going to be actually doing a short story. I'm going to have a voice generator read that to us because I am terrible at reading out my own writing. I hate doing it. So let's dive into it and hear how the Knight Wardens were created.
Shadows on Steel by Tyler Tarter. Clangs and hisses broke up the casual conversation that filled his command team's channel as they sat strapped into their drop pods. Shadow Captain Kalis Dustbane did his best to ignore the idle chatter as he studied the battle maps that were still filtering into his retinal display. The fight with the forces of the warp had not been going well, and it looked like his company was arriving just in time. Okay, Marines, listen up. It looks like our allies have been forced to fall back further, and they're now stuck behind the walls of Montorak to wait for us. We'll be dropping behind enemy lines, so be ready to fight whatever those traitor sorcerers have brought with them. Victorus AUT Mortis. As he closed the connection, the countdown took over, marking down the 10 seconds until the drop pods activated and shot out into the void between the battle barge and the planet. Kalis jerked as his pod released, its thrusters driving it towards a farmland that they targeted. He took a breath and let his shadows consume him, so that he slipped into a deep pre-battle trance. Reality snapped him back to consciousness as the impact alert went off. Moments later, the drop pod struck the wet earth, and the doors released a slam into the ground. The unnatural light of the demon-riddled world was pushed back by the shadows that he and his 6 shadow blades pushed out, providing them cover to disappear into rubble nearby. As Kalis knelt beside a tumbled statue of some long-lost hero of the Imperium, the first of the demonic foes approached. A squad of the dust-filled former Marines of the Thousand Suns approached, a dozen horrors swarming around their feet. With small shifts of the shadows around him, he signaled his warriors. The bolt guns of Vatrius and Daysec slipped out from between the stones of the destroyed farmhouse on the far side of the drop pod. Several quick shots barked out in the mottled darkness, all striking a lone sorcerer who controlled the patrol, sparking his shields. As all attention moved towards the 2 shooters, Kalis activated the defense system on the drop pod before slowly slinking around the distracted enemy. Automatic bolt rounds fire ripped from the turret mounted to the top of the drop pod and shredded the lead demons, creating even more chaos in their ranks. Kalis let the shadows hide him as he crossed the distance, stepping out just behind the sorcerer, letting him slam his sword up into the Chaos Marine's armpit. An unearthly scream echoed to the unnatural night, almost a magical beacon to the many enemies that encircled the city. He activated his company's Vox channel while swinging his power sword through the sorcerer's neck. Use the shadows to advance on the siege camps. While the lesser demons are a problem, we need to take out the sorcerers. Prioritize anything with a staff or using magic, and work your way forward until you're able to contact our allies. Not waiting for a response, he slipped back into the shadows and began to advance on the enemy as the remaining squad of Rubrick's Marines froze where they were, and were quickly ripped to shimmering dust by the autocannon of the drop pod. For several moments, he let the shadows hide his progress, dancing through the sea of cultists and demons that pressed towards the walls of the city where PDF troopers shot down from. Demons and cultists fell in waves as they threw up ladders and hurled explosives up at the wall. Just out of range of the wall guns, hundreds of azure and yellow Chaos Marines skulked, sending lightning bolts up to rip chunks out of the thick walls. The screams of the dying were a quiet melody nearly drowned out by punctuations of violent action. Another large crack erupted down the rockcrete walls, forming another small breach that horrors of every kind rushed towards as the human servant of chaos goaded demon engines into position to further exploit the breach. Kalis moved forward, his sword and plasma pistol held low. He used the unnatural shadows caused by the demonic light to continue his approach, passing by several of the more useless enemy soldiers that malingered on the backs of the enemy formation. Behind him, some of the escorting blade guard eliminated those who got close enough to spot any anomalies. His unit angled towards one of the demon engines, stepping from the shadows to kill its human escort before sticking explosives to the thrashing body. With a sharp prod from his power sword, the Forge Fiend charged forward into the backs of the enemy formations before the heavy explosives ignited. A large orange fireball erupted into the unnatural night, consuming a large group of Zanginger and cultists. Several azure and yellow helmets whipped in their general direction as his team slipped back into the shadows and moved to quickly escape the advancing Terminators that would rip his team apart with their heavy weapons and magic. Kayla slipped between the demonic legs of another Forge Fiend before moving towards the larger formation of Rubrick's Marines that advanced on the walls. With a centering breath, he picked a target and slowly advanced on the junior sorcerer who controlled one of the banks of former Space Marines. He activated his team's Vox channel, keeping his voice low despite his seal helmet. Time to hit hard, brothers. From this point on, stay close and use the shadows as needed, but the enemy will know where we are. We push up to the gates and connect with our allies. Strike on my shot. He activated his plasma pistol and let it quickly charge under his cloak before lifting it to aim at the Thousand Suns sorcerer floating a dozen yards away. With a quick trigger pull, the ball of purple plasma erupted into the air, striking the traitor in the back of the head, searing a glowing channel that widened the split in the headdress. The nearby Rubrick's Marines fell silent as Kalis advanced, switching out his pistol for his sword as a half-dozen rounds ripped into the enemy formation. His blade swiped from side to side, clearing a path through them before another sorcerer could step in and take control of them. The screech of demons and clunking of Terminator armor behind him pushed him forward. Blades and bolters flashed as his team advanced on the friendly walls, cutting through the sea of blues and purples that distorted reality around him. A portal swirled into existence to his right, its etheric light ominous as it grew to reveal a bird-headed, exalted sorcerer. The traitor's armor was adorned in shoulder-mounted braziers lit with unnatural flames and crimson ribbons covered in an unknown text that was written in dried blood. Kalis barely got his sword up in time to block the strike of the bronze staff. The plasma blade arched against a strike of raw warp energy. Sword and staff reflected off of each other as the power of Korix's shadows warred with the warp, drawing much of the attention of both armies. The Shadow Master pulled from the darkness to hide his strikes and movements to give him any advantage as he was pushed back into the waiting mobs. Kalis caught flashes of movement as his guards picked off the enemy around the fight, not letting anyone interfere. For several moments, the battle raged with strikes flashing faster than Kalis had seen in a very long time. He pushed himself hard, his sword deflecting the strikes, and he quickly activated the charge on his plasma pistol. With a quick yank to release it from a maglock on his hip, he slammed the barrel up into the sorcerer's beakhead and pulled the trigger. In a flash of gore and glowing plasma, the magic around him blinked out, and the floating body dropped into a crumpled heap at his feet. Kalis took a deep breath before returning to his charge toward the walls, his rage at the distorted magic of the Thousand Suns pushing him on despite the cuts and bruises he'd acquired. For nearly an hour, the warriors of the Raven Guard cut through the enemy, angling for one of the hive gates. Zanginger and cultists fell by the thousands, taking a few of the black-clad Space Marines with them. Despite the loyalists carving through the ranks of their servants, the Thousand Suns hadn't approached, staying out of range of something on the walls. With another swing of his blade, Kalis stepped into the empty ground between the forces of Tzeentch and the defenders of Montorak. The General Vox channel of the Imperium connected, and a deep, exhausted voice spoke. "Unknown Space Marines, this is Knight High Lord Renford Sanson. Identify yourselves." Kalis turned and fired on a Zanginger priest who tried to attack with a group of magical archers. "This is Shadow Captain Kalis Duskbane of the Raven Guard's 3rd Company. We're here to support you. Pleasure to meet you, High Lord." If you've enjoyed this story, make sure you check out our new Knight Wardens shirts in the merch link below, and consider joining our Patreon to join them in the fight.
As you probably guessed from the Knight Wardens short story that you just listened to, they are a successor chapter of the Raven Guard that were originally sent to aid House Hestia, the Night House, in pushing back an invasion by the armies of Tzeentch. And in doing so, they discovered that the shadow fighting that the Raven Guard is famous for actually pairs very well when it comes to the heavy-handed melee focus of House Hestia. House Hestia loves just to tear things apart. Almost like 30k World Eaters, but a little bit more controlled. When they're going into combat, they're going to eliminate an entire grid sector by chain blade and close range gunfire. That is what they do. And having a Space Marine Legion that specializes in running in the shadows, accomplishing objectives in the sidelines, and sniping actually plays very, very well into what they want to do. And because of that, they've actually teamed up together permanently. The Night House actually went so far as to petition the Administratum to actually create the Knight Wardens Space Marine chapter and station them on the moon of their own planet. Their planet, Duanov, is in the Segmentum Tempestus and regularly comes under siege from the forces of Tzeentch, whether that be the Thousand Suns or Chaos Demons or Cultists. This region of space is very heavily influenced by the Sorcerers and the Warp. And because of this major threat that keeps pressing their boundaries, the Administratum actually agreed to something that isn't normally done. Normally having these two forces work together permanently is weird and hasn't been something that's been allowed since the Heresy, because of what happened in the Heresy. But due to the ongoing threat from Tzeentch, as well as threats from a Tyranid Hive fleet, Orcs, and Eldar, it had to be done. It was the only way that could really make sense to defend that territory. Now, the Night House and the Space Marine chapter share a symbol. That is the White Griffin. The White Griffin is originally the House Hestia symbol, but it was adopted by the Space Marine chapter as soon as they were created. They also created shared colors, which is purple and red, but the Space Marine chapter, being Raven Guard, went much darker. So their purple is almost black. It is so close that most of the time it looks black, unless the light hits it right. And their red is a deep, deep cardinal red that doesn't stand out in the night sky. I'll throw a picture of the captain right here. House Hestia, on the other hand, because they like to get up front and personal and into the fight, they are very flamboyantly colored. While they share the red pauldrons and the silver accents there as their house symbol, the rest of their knights are very colorfully done, with one exception. There's a black knight. But even then, he's blinged out in a lot of silver. So the Night House serves as the primary, almost distraction carnifex for the rest of the army, because dealing with knights that are in your face and trying to rip you to shreds with giant chain swords and up-close bolter rounds or melta-guns or flamethrowers is extremely hard, while you have a bunch of Reavers and jump pack assault intercessors whipping around you, sneaking objectives away from you, while eliminators snipe you from a distance. And this plays into exactly what they want to do tactically. On top of that, this relationship bloomed so strongly that the Dreadnoughts and the Invictor Warsuit pilots are actually considered part of the Night House. So these warriors will often work in pairs with armigers to take out certain sectors. So a lot of the Dreadnoughts you'll be seeing from the Night Wardens will be Ballistus Dreadnoughts and Redemptor Dreadnoughts, things that can shoot at a distance and cover and protect the more aggressive knights in that house. Same goes for the Tactical Warsuits. Their main specialty is going to be shooting from a distance as well. And in the story, you've already met the chapter master of the Night Wardens, Kaelis Dustbane. He's the former shadow captain of the 3rd Company in the Raven Guard, and has taken up the mantle of chapter master here on this planet as well. But now that you guys know a little bit more about who the Night Wardens are, let's talk about the actual army list and what it looks like on the tabletop, so that if you want to bring your version of this army to life, you can. On top of that, we have to thank the video sponsor for today, vidIQ. They're a big reason that this is even possible. A lot of you guys that I've been able to find are directly due to vidIQ and a lot of the things they've helped me accomplish on the channel. So let's jump to an ad from them and we'll keep going. You guys may not have noticed lately, but I've been working on leveling up my YouTube channel to a whole new level. And because of that, the tool I've been using to do that has reached out to me and actually wants to affiliate with me, which is wonderful. And that is vidIQ. vidIQ is a software that specializes in leveling up your YouTube channel. It's been a long YouTube journey for me, and I'm not here because I want to blow up and become YouTube famous. That's not what I want. I'm here because I like to share my passion for Warhammer 40k lore and talk about the things I can't really talk about with my friends. A lot of my friends who play Warhammer 40k are a lot more casual than I am when it comes to lore, and being able to do these deep dives and talk about lore accurate armies and things like that isn't something I can do in my daily life. So I'm here. And because of that, I wanted to find all of you guys that are the same way. And that's what drove me to vidIQ. vidIQ is an amazing tool that gives you access to thumbnail idea generators, script outline generators, which we're actually using for this current video. It also helps you with a lot of the back-end stuff, things like tags and keywords and making sure your descriptions are accurate and detailed. All these little things are little minor tricks that help me find more of you. In the last few months since I've started doing this, I've had multiple videos reach over 5,000 people, which beforehand, if you go look, even a year ago, I was reaching maybe 100 if it was a good video. So vidIQ has really made a difference and helped me refine my skills through various trainings and tools so that I can share my videos and my love with you guys. So if this is something that intrigues you, if you want to be able to share your videos and your interests with more of the general public, there's a link down in my description that will take you to an awesome affiliate site and help you guys get set up. There are free options as well as different paid options that you can do, and I definitely recommend checking them out and figuring out what's best for you. Now let's get back to the video that vidIQ helped me create. So when it comes to the Knight Wardens, there are two ways that you can either participate or join with them. One, you can join my Patreon. That's going to be the cheapest way to do it, because building your own Knight Wardens army is not cheap. But if you want to do that as well, let's talk about what my army list looks like for the Knight Wardens as they sit right now. And I know normally with these lists, I just throw up a generic of the miniature that you can find on gamesworkshop.com. For this one, I have the entire army painted. So the miniatures you're going to see popping up here are actually the ones I've painted and are the tabletop army that we'll be bringing to the tabletop here soon. I have only played one game with them so far, and we played against the Thousand Suns and did really well. It's kind of impressive how well this army worked because it's very unconventional. So here's the list of what we did. First, you need a captain with jump pack. Mine, I went with a power sword just for lore reasons. And everything I did in this list was lore-centric, not as much meta-centric. But I think with just a few minor tweaks, you can make this very meta-skilled and make it very, very powerful. So if you're one of those players who enjoys doing that, let me know in the comments below what you tweaked. I'd love to refine this army a little bit, expand its depth a little bit more, and get it a lot more powerful, because it has a lot of potential. It really screwed with the opponent I was playing against. Next, we need a chaplain. Because of the breadth of this, a chaplain was a must as well for me. It felt right for the army, because they will be very almost religious-centric, but not as much so as like a Black Templars. They go in and fight Tzeentch demons. That's what they specialize in. Next, I went with a librarian in Phobos armor. Once again, the Raven Guard. Plus, making a librarian that is a shadow specialist just looks really cool. He's one of the favorite models I painted in this army. And we ended with a Lieutenant in Reaver armor. The model I used here is the Leviathan version of that Lieutenant. You can probably find him pretty easily third party, but you can't actually get him on Games Workshop's website anymore. So the pricing is based on the other Lieutenant in Reaver armor, even though they basically do the same thing. Next, you're going to do 2 squads of Assault Intercessors with jump packs. Jump pack units are going to be a big part of this list in accomplishing goals. When you run them, you may want to split them up. You may want to brick them up. It depends on who you're playing and what armies you're playing. In my fight against the Thousand Suns, I split them into 2 units and use them more as objective monkeys than anything else because they get anywhere very quickly. Between them and the Reavers, it was almost impossible to stop me from accomplishing objectives, scoring points, and stealing objectives from you without you being able to outmaneuver me. So you have 2 squads of those. Next, we included a Blade Guard squad. I may want to tweak this and do a second Blade Guard squad here in place of one of the Reaver squads, or maybe one of the Scout squads. But the Blade Guard are very, very strong in this unit, especially if you move them around fairly in tandem with the Knights. There's big, bulky things in the way that give them a lot of cover, and they can get in and punch very quickly without having to deal with being inside vehicles. They also control the home objective very well as well. Next, I did 2 squads of Eliminators. These are crucial to the way the army functioned, because you position them down firing lanes and pick things off left and right, and take out as many characters as you can, making dealing with the armatures we'll get to here in a minute very hard to deal with, because you either come out and you fight them, or you deal and try and find cover from the Eliminators and a few other squads that we're going to talk about here in just a minute. Next, we have a squad of Infernus Marines. I used these to hold my home objective. They are very good at clearing out close areas and preventing people from coming up behind me. So the Infernus Marines were actually critical. And once again, these guys are demon hunting specialists, especially Tzeentch hunting specialists. So having a Flamer squad inside that unit just makes sense. It's something that would be critical to them, not typical of the Raven Guard, but due to their primary enemy, it does make sense to me. Next, we have 2 squads of Reavers. These are another set of objective monkeys. Most of the time, these guys suck in Tabletop, and they are still glass cannons. They're not strong at all, and they're easy to take out. But if you've got all of these moving pieces between the assault intercessors with jump packs and the scouts we're going to talk about next, they're often lost in the sauce of the game, and they just kind of move around and accomplish points for me. And no one really dealt with them. To be fair, if I were facing a Horde army, they may struggle a little bit more. But then, again, with Horde armies, they may be strong enough to actually punch through Termagants and things like that. So, kind of a mixed bag there. Next, I do have the Scout Squads. The Scout Squads are a little bit just the heavier-handed version of the Reavers. So, they would get a little bit more stuck in to the fights, while the Reavers kind of roamed around the edges and moved quickly to objectives. But they did still kind of play that mid-board role that allowed me to move and get through things and deal with anything trying to attack the armatures and the warsuits, while also having units that could get around and score points for me as well. Okay, that is the infantry that we have brought to the table. Next, we have a Ballistus Dreadnought. This actually played pretty well. Once again, it's not a common thing to bring to the table, but given the way this army is set up, it actually made a lot of sense, because it could stand back a little ways and pick things off. It wasn't playing the same as you'd expect with Redemptor or any of the other major dreadnoughts, where it's getting up and in their face. There's other units for that. Same goes for the 2 Invictor Warsuits. The Invictor Warsuits were actually a lot of fun. They're great to have scout maneuvering and causing a lot of issues for the enemy very quickly. And they pair well with the next unit, which is the Armiger Warglaives. We have 3 of them. These 3 units are our big damage dealers and kind of distraction carnifexes, especially when you pair them with either one of the Tactical Warsuits or the Ballistus Dreadnought as covering fire. It was impressive how much damage they did and how much they distracted the enemy from dealing with my point scorers, because they were dealing with these big machines just ripping things to shreds. So it was a lot of fun to get this list together and bring it to the tabletop. I'm also working on getting some bigger knights painted. You kind of can't see them because they're still just black primer behind me. But once I get those going, it'll be fun to just try them out, replacing the 3 armigers with a single knight, and see how that balances out. I suspect it'll play just as good, if not better. Maybe, I don't know. Having 3 separate distractions was really nice. So having one really big distraction may be better, it may not. I'll let you know once we actually get into that game and play it. So now that we've talked about my army list, let's talk about what it'll take to actually build this army list now with the cost. Now, getting into this cost, I want to make it clear this is not actually how much I paid for this. I did a lot of secondhand buying. I also had about a third of this list was left over from the Leviathan box that didn't fit in with any of the other armies I'd been building. So a lot of this is actually just kind of leftover stuff from value boxes that I got. A large chunk of this also came from the Raven Guard box that was late 9th edition that I picked up because I've always wanted to build a Raven Guard or Raven Guard successor. So pairing that with the leftover Leviathan ate up a large chunk of the Space Marine cost. I think the Jump Captain and the Jump Assault Intercessors are the only Space Marines I actually bought, but I bought them through Wargame Portal, so I saved quite a bit of money there. Same with the Armigers. I bought those through my LGS and Wargame Portal and saved considerable amount of money. I think I spent less than half of this total on the actual army over the course of about 3 years, slowly building it up. So this army isn't super expensive unless you do it box by box from Warhammer.com. Whatever you do, do not do that. There's, like I said, there's value boxes that you can still find. I've seen the Raven Guard box on Amazon recently. So picking those up will save you a lot of money and make it very, very inexpensive to build this army. So make sure you try that first. So if you were to buy this box by box from Warhammer.com at full retail or your local Warhammer store, in US dollars, this is going to run you $1,238. So not the most expensive we've ever done, also not the cheapest, but it's still pretty pricey. That being said, just pivoting to Wargame Portal and Amazon, you're going to save almost 20% off of the entire army build. So as of right now, January of 2026, it's going to cost you $1,003.08 if you do it through Wargame Portal. Now, if you also do it through value boxes, you're probably going to be able to cut that in half to probably $600, $600. And if you can find some of the Leviathan stuff on Amazon and eBay, that'll save you even more money. I'd bet you could probably do this for about $400 to $500 in the end. So make sure you do that. Like I said, the values I'm giving you here are the top end if you did this the hard way pricing, not if you got them secondhand or used or in value boxes, which I do recommend as well. Sometimes we do a fluffy list. There isn't really one for this because we're not pulling anything from the Heresy or anything like that. So now that we've talked about how much this is going to cost, let's talk about what it's going to look like to paint them and bring them to life. Bringing these guys to life took a lot of extra work, mostly because I had to pull you guys first to pick color schemes and things like that, and what you guys selected is what we ended up going with pretty much. I ended up tweaking a few minor things on it. Mostly we leaned more into the silver than into the bronze like we'd originally discussed, but I think it ended up looking way better. So for this, I actually had to leave my standard Army Painter color schemes. A lot of my paint is Army Painter, but for this, I had to lean into Vallejo. But the big reason was they had colors that I hadn't been able to find anywhere else. And that was Vallejo Night Blue, which is the primary color. It has a very strong purple tint that gives it that very midnight blue color that is almost black, but not quite there yet. And this is the color we used on the armor, as well as for some of the accenting and things like that, using a little bit of white to thin it out to give me a little bit more contrast and highlights, even though I was going for a very dark armor look. On top of that, I also used their dark red to really get the dark crimson cardinal color on the shoulder pads. So those were the primary colors we leaned into there. For the metallics, I obviously stuck with Army Painter. Their metallics are fantastic. We used a lot of Nightshade for black weapons instead of silver to give them that more dark feel, which we do see with the Raven Guard as well. And we used silver to accent things just enough to make them visible and bright enough on the tabletop that they look cool. When it came to the armatures, I actually had a mix of different colors from back when I was painting D&D minis before I really got into Warhammer. And that was actually a Vallejo base as well and had some yellows and oranges. And I have to admit, Squidmar saved me on this. Their explanation on how to paint yellows and make them look good turned the yellow armature, which I'll pop up here, you can also kind of see over my shoulder too, made him look so much better with the little tips they had there. So I'll try and pop something up to link you to that video as well. But now that you guys know how I painted them, let's talk about what they play like on the tabletop. We've kind of talked about a little bit about this, but we'll dive into it in detail. So for this army, we're going to be bringing the Shadowmark Talon detachment to the table, which is one of the most underutilized that I've seen from the original Space Marine Codex. But this provides every single one of my infantry stealth. So not my Invictor tactical war suits or my Ballistus Dreadnought, which is okay. They're there for more distraction purposes and blowing things up purposes and anti-vehicle purposes. But all of my other Space Marines now have -1 to hit and wound, as if they were in cover the entire time, plus cover stacks on top of that. So giving them that very stealthy shadow ability to move across the board and be very hard to hit is exactly what I was going for. Sometimes it makes shooting them just not worth it when you're having to choose between a squad of Reavers who may be scoring some points on an objective, or the Armature who's coming at you to rip you apart, and the Dreadnought buddy who's shooting you with missiles. So this distraction leads to a very unique playstyle that did take me around to actually figure out how to do. But by accomplishing this, it really makes you hard to deal with. Because a lot of times, especially if it's a chunkier army like the Thousand Sons, they have to decide whether to sacrifice the Terminators to fight the Armatures, or to try and shoot the point scorers. And either way, it's kind of wrong. If they sacrifice themselves to get rid of my point scorers, I have more point scorers. I'm almost a Horde army that way. I have a bunch of different point scorers moving around the table in different directions that are very annoying to you. But if my Armature's close, and there's a Dreadnought or a Tactical Warsuit there as well, you're probably going to lose that squad of Terminators, because I can deal that much damage that quickly to you. So having to try and move into cover and avoid those units while also trying to deal with point scorers is nearly impossible, and it was a lot of fun. It was kind of frustrating for my opponent a little bit. He did have fun with it as well, because it brought a new dynamic, and he had to really try and think and outmaneuver me tactically, which I think the armies of Zeech honestly kind of feel like they're missing lately. So doing a more tactical game was something that he enjoyed as well. So now that you guys have seen the breakdown of our channel army that's taken about a year, maybe almost 2 to get going, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you think there's units that may be a better fit or would be a fun addition to that army, also let me know down below. And stay tuned here in a couple months, depending on what happens with a few people I'm discussing videos with. We may also do a breakdown of House Hestia. Hopefully I can get them painted by then. Honestly, that may be the biggest delay. And talk about the Knight army that's paired with them as well. And if you guys want to join this army, like I said, join the Patreon. If you're one of the first from each tier, you will actually have your name etched on the base so that you are that unit whenever we go to the tabletop and play a game. And the tiers go all the way up from the recruit level, where you just get some basic stuff, all the way to the Knight tier, which, if you're one of the first ones, will be one of the Knights themselves. And you'll get a lot of really cool benefits, which, if you just go to Patreon and check them out, like I said, there's a lot of really cool stuff we got going on there. We're also working on trying to build this community up more so that there's better discussion and better groups going. We need more people on Patreon to make that happen. So make sure you guys go check that out, and I will see you guys in the next one.